Phil McCoy from Ameriprise Financial and the various group of financial advisors on Winchester Avenue. Good morning, Philly.
Good morning, guys. How are you all?
We are well. I assume that you are en route to work right now.
I am en route to work. It has been a long morning, Rob Mario. I started this morning with me oversleeping, almost missing my morning spot with you, and then I realized I needed gas, so I am still moving.
Oh, well, you're always on the move, man. Always. I understand that, and I appreciate it, too.
You know, Phil, you can get an EV. You wouldn't have to worry about gas.
Yeah, that's a good point, but I don't know what getting an EV means right now. Now there's like social connotation behind it. I don't know that I'm prepared for that.
You're right there.
But you're right. If I had an EV, I would. But to be honest, Bill, I'm not very good. I like to get gas like when it says it's screaming at me low, and that's when I get gas. So I'd probably run my battery too low.
And Bill, I was going to agree with you. It is nice to be able to drive past those signs and not have to worry about how much it costs for a gallon of gas and how long I got to get out of my vehicle and stand there in the cold to pump gas. We don't have to do that anymore, do we?
Yeah, I have not looked at the price of gas for several years now. I have no idea how much they cost.
Bills are recent. So you don't know anyway because you have so much money. Whatever anything costs doesn't matter to you anyway, Bill.
I have nothing. I have a tin cup that I'm trying to send in front of Gilstrap's house, and he says, "Go away, go away."
Don't go to Gilstrap's house right now. Wait till he's clean first, man. Stay away from that. Phil, I was going to say that you get gasoline, kind of like the Steelers get quarterbacks at the last minute.
Yes, at the very last second. But I would say that I am happy that they brought Mason Rudolph back. I've always been a Mason Rudolph fan. I don't know that he's going to bring another Super Bowl to Pittsburgh, but that guy must bleed black and gold. I don't know why in the world he would want to come back to that city after the way that he's been treated, but I'm glad that he's back. And I hope the longer this goes on, I'm starting to get a glimpse into what life with Aaron Rodgers would be like. I kind of hope he stays away.
I'm going to answer the Mason Rudolph question the way all questions dealing with money are answered. Too many fans get bogged down in, they treated this guy badly, he'll never want to come back. Our facilities aren't good enough, people won't sign with us. Athletes sign where the money is. Period. End of story. The Steelers offered him $8.5 million over 2 years. It was more than anybody else was offering him. That's why he came back. It's as simple as that. It really is. Athletes don't care if the family lounge isn't up to par. They don't care if there's free massages. They don't care if the lunch is free in the cafeteria. How much money are you going to pay me? That's what matters. Until you get to that point in your career where you're Aaron Rodgers and you're like, I don't really, I have to decide whether I want to play or not. Otherwise, I don't care. It doesn't make that much of a difference whether it's $21 million a year or $22 million a year because he's 42 years old. Everybody else, you go where they pay you. That's why Aroldis Chapman signed with the Pirates last year. Why? Why would you go to pitch for the Pittsburgh Pirates? Because they were paying him $10 million and nobody else was. It's that simple.
Well, Rob Brant, I'm glad that he's back. I don't care why he's back. I'm just glad that he's back.
I noticed Dylan put on his headphones. Maybe he's got a comment for you, Phil, because another Raven signed with the Steelers.
Sure
I don't know.
I'm sure he does.
Go ahead, Dylan. Sure. Where are you? Turn your mic on. We can't hear Dylan. Yeah. All right, well, come back when it works. All right, whatever he's going to say, I don't know. All right, let's talk.
We muted Ravens fans.
Let's
before we go to business, what about the West Virginia being not included in the NCAA, Phil?
Yeah, get your mic fixed, Dylan. I want to hear you rant on this one. I heard Caridi say during the Mountaineer Report, Phil, that out of 111 projections for the NCAA tournament,
is that it?
You're on now, Dylan. West Virginia was on 111 of 111 NCAA tournament projections. Stubblefield's get me again. And they didn't make it.
Yeah, what I was going to say about this.
I certainly don't.
Oh, go ahead, Phil.
Go ahead, Dill.
Okay. What I was going to say about Aaron Rodgers was I think this will just go on as long as Rodgers is still getting something out of being the center of attention, which is, he hates the attention. He doesn't look for attention at all, but he keeps doing things that give him so much attention somehow. But, yeah, Steelers want him. It doesn't make much difference to me. He's not a needle mover. But WVU, yeah, it just so happens that UNC, the team that was thought by everybody to not be good enough to enter the tournament. They were, I think, 1-6 or 1-12 against quad one teams, and it was and the head of the selection committee is the athletic director of North Carolina, Bubba Cunningham. So I think people have very much noticed that, let's say. But I think this is a branding thing. North Carolina, they have to be in the tournament so people watch the games. We can't just do it. Nobody cares about WVU. West Virginia. Like, it's silly. Everybody, any expert said that the better resume was the Mountaineers.
And he cited an injured Mountaineer player as a reason why he didn't think West Virginia should be in.
Yeah, the Tucker DeVries injury, the guy that's been out since the beginning of December, and they beat Iowa State and Kansas, their two biggest wins of the season after that point.
Yep. It's the Danny Fortson argument. Remember when Danny Fortson, I'm pretty sure it was Danny Fortson when he played for Cincinnati. He got injured just before the NCAA tournament. It cost Cincinnati, I think, like a 1 seed. It's that injured player changes your lineup so you're not the same team that you were. His argument would have had a lot more, I think, weight behind it had that injury happened last week and not in early December.
We just saw that happen in the college football playoff with Florida State last season.
Yep,
and Iowa State's another one. Iowa State star player got hurt last week, but yet they still got a very high seed. So
yeah, it's part of the dirty part of the business there, right? But beat Colorado and then you take it out of his hands.
That's the other thing is that as we've watched the last even couple months of the Mountaineers, I just watched them. I'm like, this team's not good. But it just so happened that the other bubble teams weren't very good either, and that West Virginia had a better resume. But yeah, just watching them, especially that Colorado game to end the year now, is, man, this team's not good.
If you beat them, you take it out of somebody else's independent thinking, right? Or in that case, maybe prejudiced thinking.
And will the coach be back next year? Probably not, DeVries.
You don't think?
I don't think so.
There's a lot of rumors about him taking the Iowa
job or Indiana job. There's that's from his part of the world.
Trade up.
Yep,
trade up. Okay, Phil, let's talk money. Friday was a good day. It didn't claw back all of the losses of the week, but it was a good day. Was that just a matter of the market is low enough, it's time to buy back in right now and then trade out, or was something else bringing the news on Friday that spurred a rally?
That's yet to be seen. So right now it looks like it was a kind of a dead cat bounce, and you'll get that in correction markets or bear markets, which we're not there on the S&P yet, but that did look like a dead cat bounce. Now we'll find out because we got retail sales that just came out a few minutes ago. So it came out while I was pumping gas and scrambling to get on the phone to get here on time, but I do know that it didn't meet expectations, and that's a pretty bad sign.
Here are the numbers, Phil. Retail sales increased 0.2% in February, which is less than expected. Ex-autos up 0.3%, meeting estimate. That's just across the CNBC website at the moment. NASDAQ futures are up 0.1%. S&P futures down 0.1%. Dow futures down 0.33%. Go right ahead, sir.
Well, and it's still like, so we'll get this weaker economic data, and 6 months ago, and I find this very interesting, and you just throw tariffs into this economic soup that we've got, and what does it mean? But if we would have gotten this data, say, this time last year, it probably would have sent our market soaring to the green on the anticipation that it's going to make the Federal Reserve cut rates quicker, which our markets want to happen. However, right now we've got this slowing growth in the face of what we're afraid of increasing inflation at the same time, and that word stagflation is spooking everyone. And what's the Federal Reserve do for that? Now, we're going to find out on Wednesday, but Jerome Powell is really, really good when he does his Fed speak, when he has that little conference at 2:30. I always love watching the markets, but he's really good at not tipping his hand and not kind of boxing himself in with what they're going to do or what they're planning to do. No one expects them to cut rates on Wednesday, but to lay out there the possibility of a rate cut possibly in May or in the future months of this year. Right now, I think our markets are pricing in 3, and that's kind of gone back and forth from between 0 rate cuts, 1 rate cut, 2 rate cuts, but it hasn't been as positive for our markets than what it had been in the past, and that is because slowing growth, increasing inflation. If we got increasing inflation, it's really difficult to cut rates to spur on growth because that could bring back inflation to where it was in 2022.
Admiral?
Yeah, Phil, I get the impression there's so much stuff coming out at the same time. It's hard to gauge where we are. We have the tariffs, we have the federal layoffs, we have the perception of picking wars with our who have been our friends over the years. I hear all the time the market feeds on stability. This is any time other than stability. But yet the market seems to, even though it's taken some hits, it is still holding its own. So this speaks well for the market, but it doesn't speak well necessarily for sustaining this integrity the market has now.
There's a lot of optimism about the tax plan that's coming out. So you do have a lot of investors, you have a lot of mutual fund and economists that say, hey, this is going to be painful while these tariffs are being sorted out. Now, there's also, and I kind of buy into this as well, it's not necessarily the tariffs that is making our markets fall in particular. It's what will the tariffs be, and that's exactly what you're just saying. It's the uncertainty of what they are going to be. But then there's a handful out there, and maybe throw me into this as well, that says, hey, these tariffs are meant to raise revenue to support the rate cuts or the continuation of the 2017 tax plan, and maybe even a deeper corporate tax cut. And if a deeper corporate tax cut, whether it's good or bad for the economy, is that can be debated, but it would be good for our overall market. So there is some optimism that's around the corner when the individual and the corporate tax plan comes into play and that starts to get debated. And there's a lot of people that think that the reason that we're being so aggressive with the tariffs is to justify future rate cuts or at least, at the very least, keeping them where they were from 27.
You're talking about, when you said rate cuts, you mean tax cuts, Phil, or rate cuts?
I'm sorry, I did mean tax rate cuts. How about that?
Tax rate cuts. That's a good save. I like that.
Good combination.
There you go.
Yeah.
Bill understood you the whole time.
I did. Hey, I feel kind of a lead on to that. The market takes a long-term view, but how long a view does it take? I look at some of these cutbacks in the federal government. On the surface, they're numbers, but in reality, they're getting to the core of some of our basic programs, such as medical research, such as environmental research, infrastructure research. Are these concerns being addressed at all by the market, or are they too far out in the future?
I think it's too far out, but it does play into some of that uncertainty that we were just talking about. And you kind of gave me a leeway to fix a mistake I had made last week. And it just reminded me I have to repair an error that I said last week. I had said I'd strongly doubt that there's a 10-year period where our markets were negative. Rob knew it when I said it. He spared me the online embarrassment, but one just happened. It finished in like 2009, where the S&P was negative on a rolling 10-year period. But what we do focus on, and of course the long-term outlook, again, it's yet to be seen, because as we blow these programs up, and it's been described as like the corporate model, and I wouldn't disagree with that. The corporate model is look, we've got issues. We need to blow this thing up and rebuild it. Well, what's that rebuild look like? We're still in the process of blowing some of it up because it's perceived that these programs and some of these departments are broken. So they're going to blow them up, and how they're blowing them up is raising a lot of concerns. It's on the human level. There's a lot of fear because I'm going to lose my job or where I'm going to be, and we all sympathize with that. But when it rebuilds, what does it look like when it rebuilds? And that's what we don't know, and that's where some of this uncertainty with the market and our emotions get involved. We've had a lot of clients that are getting emotionally involved in their fear, whether they like the current administration or not, but they don't like how they're doing it. And that's bringing about some fear, and that's where this discipline, the investor discipline, comes into play, where you do have to put your blinders on and look at the markets and look at the numbers, like the jobs reports, and when the Federal Reserve speaks, and what's retail sales look like, and consumer confidence, and CPI, which was pretty good, by the way, and the PCE that's coming on March 28th, which is supposed to be the Fed's preferred inflation measure, and and what will that mean, and how will they predict it? And all, like you had just said a few minutes ago, Bill, you could have taken my spot this morning. All this stuff is coming out so fast and so hard, and it's hard to predict, and it's hard to determine what means what at the moment. And this is a good report, this is a bad report, but what about we did this a few weeks ago, and now we're seeing people lay off, and we're spending less money, and we've got these tariffs with avocados coming in from Mexico, and what does all of this stuff mean? And we don't really know yet, and that uncertainty is what's causing our markets all this volatility in our markets.
So, Phil, you hit the nail on the head there about the market being volatile, and so I'm kind of interested in what's your projection on the roller coaster this week? And as for myself, I have a portfolio and I try not to look at it, but what do we do? Where should we be looking at right now as far as our investments, and what should we do with our money? Should we just kind of like grin and bear it and hope things correct themselves?
Yes, because here's the thing, whether markets are going good and there's a great outlook, or they're going poorly and there's a poor outlook, for long-term investors, you shouldn't be invested based off what's currently going on right now. You're looking at the long term. So your asset mix, stocks, bonds, cash, what type of stocks, how aggressive are they, what standard deviation am I willing to accept in my portfolio, is all a personal finance decision. So if those dollars that you have are being used, they should have already been put in something less volatile, more conservative, some sort of risk-free rate of return, because that's coming out to feed my family and replace my income because I'm in retirement, or I have a goal, whether it be a vacation or paying for college or a wedding or whatever it may be. I had a goal, so therefore I put that money on the sideline so I don't have to be concerned about that. So the money that you have in your equity portfolio that is going through all this volatility, sometimes, and remember, volatility is not always a bad thing. Friday it was a really good thing, but if the money that you have there is long-term money, and our outlook on the long-term is positive. And there's a J.P. Morgan. If anyone would like to email us or call us, I'd be happy to send them this visual. But the average downturn in our markets, it's a great visual. The average downturn in our markets, S&P 500, since 1980 is 14.2%. That is a normal average year that we fall back 14.2%. However, 33 of the last 44 years have been positive, and the average return is really good. So those average fallbacks of 14.2, it is of the utmost importance that we don't get at 10, 12, 14%, or even 20%, especially 20% for that matter, and then get off the boat and say, hey, man, this is never going to stop. It turns around when you least expected it would turn around, where there's no optimism in sight. Think back to 2020. I love to go back and look at 2020 because it is in a very small capsule what the markets do. But our markets turned around when we weren't even paying attention. We were worried that we were never going to get back out, and COVID was going to kill everybody. We were walking down the aisles of grocery stores. I saw one this weekend in Philadelphia where they still had the 6-foot markers out, and you had to go up and down the arrows, up one way, down the other way, and you had to stay away from everybody. And we didn't know what any of this meant, but at that time, our markets were soaring back, and there was nothing to be optimistic about. Our markets are forward-looking, so we may even be looking past how the tariffs will shake out and assume the worst right now. But when they shake out in its entirety and then the tax plan comes, that's reason for optimism. So it's of the utmost importance that whatever you do personally, whatever you do internally in your own home to deal with the volatility, whether it's to not look, whether it's to look and buy in, that's what the smartest people would do, is say, hey, look, it's 10% cheaper than what it was a few months ago. I'm going to purchase in because I know that it's at a discount right now, and eventually it will come back because it is normal for our markets to fall 14.2%. And I get pushed back on that with someone. It's not normal. The reason why, well, there's always different reasons why. It wasn't normal that we fell back 38% in 2020 in the course of 5 weeks because of COVID. That wasn't normal either. But as consumers, what we need to look at, as investors, what we need to look at is the stock market always boils down to companies' ability to make money, and they find a way to make money at the end of the day. They're always profitable, or else they won't be around. And if companies aren't around, if there's not retailers, whether Amazon or brick-and-mortar retailers, we won't need our money anyway. But they will find a way to make money. It will make us sick as consumers, but as investors, we need them to do that so our portfolios can continue to grow.
There's more talk about recessions now, Phil, and if that word is talked about and mentioned enough, it kind of creates its own momentum, and that people start to become concerned. They stop spending as much money, start saving more, and that in and of itself begins to slow down economic activity.
Yes, it does, and eventually, so what we see is, and we talked about this in 23 a lot, that we will complain about the prices of things, but in our fear about recession, but we don't necessarily do them. And that's why I want to dig into this retail report that we had just gotten, that we just know it didn't meet expectations. But as consumers, we'll complain about it, and mentions online of a recession, of course, are up right now. But I think before we get to that recession point, we need to tackle the stagflation point first. But will consumers follow suit and not spend money the way that their mouth says that they won't? We do that all the time with eggs as well. You know, I mean, look at the price of eggs, which has become a flashpoint for inflation. I don't know that that's justified because of the bird flu, but nonetheless, we complain about the price of eggs. My family complains about the price of eggs. We complain about it every time we go to the store, but we still eat the same amount of eggs. We're not eating less eggs because of that price. So when is that breaking point for the consumer? And that's what these reports will help us with, is what was the breaking point, and is it a legitimate concern in the near future to talk about recession? Most think that it's not legitimate in the near future, but of course in the further out, it's always legitimate because recessions happen. It's a normal part of our economy.
About a minute left here, Phil. What are we watching for this week in terms of major reports now that this retail sales report has fallen?
We want to dig into that retail sales report, and then Wednesday, the Federal Reserve, and how does the Federal Reserve determine this, and how will they lay out the dot plot, and what are their plans with interest rates for 2025 and in the future, and where do they see this going, and how long does it take? That dot plot, I think, is really important on Wednesday.
Are we still in reporting season with earnings?
Yeah, it's just kind of the big boys have already reported. There's a few left, but the big ones have already reported. So we are in reporting season, but it's almost finished.
All right. How do we get in touch with you for more information today, Phil?
You can reach us at 304-263-4343 or stop by and see us with an appointment at 1270 Winchester Avenue right here in Martinsburg.
Thank you, Phil. And is there anything I need to do to make sure your alarm is working tomorrow morning at 6:38?
I'm going to check that. I was tired last night, so I'm going to check it. My wife saved me this morning. She always does. She always saves me. But at 6:26, she says, "Hey, you got to call Rob. He's going to be mad at you." So I jumped right out of bed.
She's a good woman, Phil. Keep her. That's a good woman.
She is.
That's a good woman right there.
She is. I've outkicked my coverage.
Thank you, Mrs. Phil. Hey, don't worry about it. We all did. Other than Brad Pitt. Have a good day, sir.
Thank you, guys.